Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Now we're going live, and we're going to start our reading of Friedrich by Hans-Peter Richter, which is a book which I started teaching when I first started as a teacher, and it tells the story of a young Jewish boy called Friedrich growing up during Hitler's rise to power in Nazi Germany, and how society changes and how attitudes change towards the Jewish people over the period of that time. I would suggest you need to stick with it. The first couple of chapters are just setting the scenes and the context and what's going on, and then the story sort of starts to pick up when we get to chapter 5, chapter 6. So we'll start with chapter 1, which is on Showbie, and it's setting the scene, 1925. Someone had called him Polycarp, and he kept his name all the time he ruled over our front garden. He wore green trousers, a red waistcoat, and a blue peaked cap. His left hand stuck in his trouser pocket, his right held a long pipe. He stood in the middle of the lawn and surveyed the garden like someone enjoying the end of a hard day's work. Polycarp never moved from this spot. If the grass grew too high for him to see the dahlias by the fence, the landlord's wife would creep across the lawn on her knees and clip the blades to matchstick length with her garden shears. We saw Herr Johann Resch, our landlord, only rarely. He never came outside except on holidays if the weather was fine. Then he'd slowly stride to the centre of the garden, his wife following with a chair. Snorting, he'd sit down next to Polycarp, his garden dwarf. Herr Resch always stayed in his chair for exactly 1 hour, watching the passers-by in the street. Then he'd get up, circle around Polycarp, and puff his way back to the house. Until the next holiday, he would watch Polycarp, the front garden, and the street from his window. Herr Resch wasn't just the owner of a house. He had begun as a salesman of bathing suits, but over the years he'd managed to get promoted to district manager. Now he let other salesmen do his work while he conducted his business by telephone. At last, Herr Resch could rule, and he let everyone feel it. His house was his seat of government. Salesmen and tenants were his subordinates. We lived on the second floor. That is, my parents lived there. My father was out of work and was about to ask Herr Resch to exchange our apartment for a smaller one when I was born. By 1925, most Germans had run through their savings trying to survive the devaluation of the mark. There was very little prospect of finding work. Hardship and unemployment were on the rise throughout Germany. So my parents were even more worried when I came into the world. I too wanted to eat and needed clothes, but I think they were pleased all the same. Friedrich Schneider was born exactly 1 week later. The Schneiders lived in the house right above us. Herr Schneider was an official with the post office. My parents scarcely knew him. He always said a friendly good morning on his way to work and an equally friendly good evening when he returned, but only rarely was there any real conversation. My parents knew Frau Schneider, a small woman with dark hair, even less well. She would do her shopping or clean the stairs and immediately go back into her apartment. She smiled at everyone she met, but unlike her neighbours, she never stopped to gossip. Our parents grew closer only after Friedrich and I were born. So at the end of chapter 1, perhaps some things to reflect on. It's the circumstances in Germany at that time that allowed perhaps the situation for something like fascism to rise, caused by unemployment and the devaluation of the mark and the situation that people found themselves in after the First World War and the repatriations that Germany was asked to pay to make up for all the what happened in that First World War. So we move on. Potato pancakes, 1929. Mother and I were still at breakfast when Frau Schneider rang our bell. She'd been asked to go to City Hall and didn't know how long she would be. She didn't want to take him with her either. Could he stay with us? Of course, my mother said. Bring him down and the two boys can play together. Half an hour later, Friedrich was at the door. We knew each other and had even quarrelled, But although he had lived above us for 4 years, Friedrich had never been inside our apartment before. Legs spread wide, I blocked the door to my room. My mother's pleas achieved nothing. I didn't budge. Defiantly, I looked at Friedrich. I didn't want to share my toys with him. Friedrich looked back. Then he squatted down with his back against our front door. He pulled a bit of twig from his pocket. My father was in the Black Forest, he said. He bought me this whistle from there. It's a cuckoo whistle. Friedrich lifted it to his mouth and blew cuckoo. He put it down again and laughed. My eyes must have grown very large. Each time Friedrich blew cuckoo, I moved a step closer till I stood right in front of him. Friedrich laughed again and pressed the cuckoo whistle into my hand. At first I didn't understand. Speechless and stupid, I stared at him. Then I understood. I took Friedrich's sleeve and pulled him across the hall and pushed him into my room and to my toys. You can play with them, I told him, saving only my bear. Bear at my side. I crouched in the corner beside my bed and blew cuckoo. Nothing but cuckoo. Friedrich started with my building blocks. He unpacked them and tried to build them into a tower, but the tower kept collapsing. At first, Friedrich didn't mind. He even laughed, but then he got angry and scolded the wooden blocks. Finally, he toppled everything himself and looked for another toy. He found my truck. He piled the blocks into it and pulled the loaded truck across the room. By this time, I'd had enough of cuckoo calls. My lips hurt and my jaw ached from unaccustomed blowing, and I put the whistle aside and got the train out of the toy cupboard. Friedrich handed me the rails and I fitted them together. Then we set up the cars. I let Friedrich wind the engine. The train pulled off. If we wanted to stop, we had to slide after it on our stomachs and adjust a lever in the caboose, but the train usually stopped by itself because the engine had run down. At first we played freight trains, loading the cars with dried horse chestnuts, and then I showed Friedrich how to derail the train, and we played railroad disaster. At last we grew tired of playing. Stretched out on the floor, we stared blankly at the lamp. Strewn all around us were building blocks, rails, chestnuts, railroad cars, old rugs and bits of paper. Only my bear still sat upright in its corner, surveying the mess. Just then Mother came into the room. She asked us to help her make potato pancakes. We only had potato pancakes on very special occasions. They were my father's favourite dish, and Mother always let us help her make them. Father usually ground the potatoes and I chopped onions until my eyes watered. Since Father wasn't home, I stuffed the peeled potatoes in the grinder and Friedrich turned the handle. Mother cut up the onions herself. Friedrich and I sprinkled flour over the batter and added a pinch of salt. We were very proud of our contribution. Mother put the pan on the burner and poured oil into it. The oil began to splutter. It smelled delicious. Mother turned the pancakes. Ready. The edges were crisp, dark brown, growing lighter towards the centre and changing into a greyish green. Friedrich got the first potato pancake. Hot, Mother warned. Friedrich tossed the pancake from one hand to the other. I grabbed it from him. Friedrich got it back. We wrestled. Mother scolded. The oil in the pan sputtered and the pancake landed on the floor. We came to an agreement. Friedrich bit into one side, I into the other. That way, we ate all the potato pancakes. A real feast. We leaned against the wall by the stove, tired and full. And you didn't leave a single one for Father, Mother said. A pity. She cleared away the pan, then looked us over. You're a sight, she decided. Into the hot tub. What she said next was drowned by our bellows of joy. Baths are grand, but they are much, much grander if two take them together. We slapped the water, shrieked, gurgled, shouted, splashed and laughed. Mother had to run from one end of the tub to the other, mopping up the water we kept spilling on the floor. Not until our landlord knocked at his ceiling did we calm down. Mother used this opportunity to scrub us clean. One soaping wasn't enough. Only after the third rinsing could you recognise us. While I still splashed in the tub, Mother dried Friedrich and said jokingly, Well, Fritzchen, you look like a little Jew. Snow. 1929. "Mother," I said, "look how beautifully it's snowing. I want to be out in it." Mother answered from the kitchen, "I believe you, but work comes first, my boy, and then we'll go out in the snow." The front garden was buried in snow. Only the tip of Polycarp's blue cap showed above the white blanket. Although the flakes still fell calmly and evenly, Frau Resch came out into the front garden. With a shovel, she scraped the snow from the flagstones and flung it to the side where the pruned rose bushes stood. By heaping the snow onto the border until a long hill stretched all the way to the garden gate, she cleared the whole path. And then she went back into her apartment. "Mother!" I called. "Frau Resch has shoveled all the snow away." Mother laughed. "Don't you worry. More will fall. Lots more." The house door banged shut. Friedrich ran to the gate and out. On the other side, he jumped into the snow, both feet at once. Carefully, he took one very large step, turned around, bent down, and looked at the prints his shoes had made. And then he straightened up. He threw back his head as far as it would go and opened his mouth to let the snow fall in. He even stuck out his tongue to catch snowflakes. He stood like that for quite a while and swallowed snow until he had lost the taste for it. And then he looked at his footprints again. A new idea came to him. He began to stamp a trail in the snow, and because the snow whirled so beautifully, so like dust, Friedrich ran with both feet dragging. Clouds of snowflakes swirled around him. "Mother!" I asked. "Are you going to be long? Friedrich's already playing in the snow." Mother said, "You must learn to wait. Have a little patience." Very quietly, Frau Schneider closed the front door. When she saw Friedrich in front of the next house, she crept up from behind. Before he could notice her, she had thrown snow over his head with both hands. Friedrich shrieked and shook himself. He turned around, and when his mother only threw more snow at him, he ducked down laughing. His fingers spread, he guarded his face. One leap, he stood before his mother. He hid his head under her coat and pushed tightly against her to escape from the flying snow. Frau Schneider crouched down, laughing. She hugged Friedrich against her and knocked the snow off his coat. Then she took hold of his shoulders and danced around with him in the snow. "Mother!" I implored. "Frau Schneider's now in the snow too. Do please go down." Mother sighed. "Don't pester me, boy," she said. "I'm working as fast as I can." At the curb, Frau Schneider looked left and right to see if the road was clear, and then she took a short run and slithered all the way across the road. She repeated this 3 or 4 times until one could see her path clearly. Then she took a few short steps, hopped onto the icy path, spread her arms wide, and glided safely across. One could see how much pleasure she got from doing this. And when she slid once again, she swayed, lost her balance, her feet rushed from under her. Thump! She landed in the snow. Laughing, she stayed there where she was and only scrambled to her feet when Friedrich tried to pull her up. Friedrich too was allowed to slide, but he couldn't do it as well as his mother. After taking a run, he'd place his feet next to instead of behind each other, thrashing about in the air with his arms. But his mother always caught him before he fell. "Mother!" I begged. "The Schneiders are sliding now. Do hurry!" Exasperated, Mother answered, "I'm going to finish the dishes before we go. The slide won't melt that fast." Friedrich made some snowballs with the clean snow. He squeezed them as hard as he could. He piled the finished snowballs up in front of our garden gate. Frau Schneider also made snowballs. She collected her pile on the sidewalk opposite. Because she worked faster than Friedrich, she helped him with this. Then they began a snowball fight. Friedrich stood on our side of the street because he couldn't throw as far as she. His mother positioned herself in the middle of the road. The snowballs flew back and forth. Friedrich made a first hit. While his mother was bending down to get more ammunition, his snowball burst on her back. But right after that, there was a white speck on Friedrich's stomach. Friedrich and his mother got red faces from bending down, jumping aside, throwing. They were gay and exuberant. "Mother," I said sadly, "they're having a snowball fight. I'd so like to be there." My mother consoled me. "I'll be ready in a second, my boy, and then we'll finally go." Friedrich's mother searched for a spot where the snow was piled high. Again she formed a snowball, but this time she laid it back onto the snow, and with her hand she carefully rolled it through the clean snow. The small ball quickly grew bigger. Every so often, Frau Schneider stopped rolling to beat the snow firm. At first, Friedrich stood beside his mother, watching curiously. Then he ran off. He too looked for a spot of unspoiled snow. Then, just like his mother, he began to roll a small snowball into a larger one. Frau Schneider finished first. She had the bigger snowball. With all her strength, she slammed it into the sidewalk in front of our house. To flatten the top, she even sat on it. She then took Friedrich's ball and lifted it on top of hers, and she filled in the gaps between the balls with more snow, then patted everything nice and smoothly around. "Mother!" I burst out. "They're building a snowman!" My mother calmed me down. Yes, I'm coming." She bought thick winter shoes and my coat. While she helped me put them on, she also looked out the window. Frau Schneider and Friedrich were now rolling 2 snow pillars to make arms for the snowman, and Friedrich handed the finished arm to his mother. Frau Schneider stuck them onto the snowman's chest. This didn't seem easy to do because the arms always threatened to break off again. "You see, it's still snowing," my mother said. She knotted a woolen scarf around my neck. Vigorously, she pulled the knitted cap down over my ears. For the first time, I was allowed to wear the new mittens Mother had knitted for me. Mother looked me up and down. "So," she nodded, "now I'll get ready, and then into the snow." While Friedrich rolled a ball for the snowman's head, Frau Schneider rummaged in the trash can. She found several remnants of coal, some potato peel, and a broken beer bottle. Friedrich wheeled the large ball in front of her feet. She heaved it on top of the snowman. Into it she pressed the bottleneck for a nose, the coal bits for eyes, and the potato peels for ears. Funny brown ears. Mother stepped beside me, dressed to go out. "I'm ready! We can go!" She looked at the window. "What a lovely snowman! All it needs is a hat." Apparently Frau Schneider wasn't satisfied with her snowman either. She examined it from all sides, shook her head, jiggled the keys out of her pocket, and came into the house. Friedrich improved the snowman here and there, smoothed one side, propped up the right arm. Then he looked at the front door and slowly sauntered toward it. In the front garden, he noticed a pile of snow beside the stone path. He climbed up and sank in and tramped through the high snow to the door, grinning. At that moment, we heard the window flung open below us. Herr Schneider bellowed, "Will you leave my roses in peace, you dirty Jew boy, you?" My mother stepped back. "Come," she said. "Come away from the window." So in that chapter, we begin to see how views are beginning to form in Germany. But I think it's quite interesting in that chapter as well. You see some of the vocabulary that has changed as time goes on. So when they used the word gay earlier, for instance, it would have meant in the term happy, that we perhaps wouldn't use it now. Or there was the word they talk about trash cans, which again wouldn't be the normal vocabulary that we might use in Britain for those types of things. And I think it's one of the joys of reading is that ability to explore language and vocabulary and how it changes is over time. So I think we'll probably read one more chapter today. We're going to look at grandfather, which starts in this chapter set in 1930. So you can be thinking about when did the First World War start? So we're about 9 years away. And when did it finish? And this is the period and how long it takes to get to the position of World War II, and how attitudes change over that time, or perhaps how they had already started to change in Germany. Grandfather, 1930. My grandfather on my mother's side worked for the railroad. He travelled a lot. Sometimes, when he passed through our town and could break his journey, he visited us. Each time, though, he announced his visit in advance by postcard. As soon as grandfather announced a visit, mother feverishly began to put our apartment in order. She dusted where no dust was left and spent the last of the household money to buy real coffee beans. She scrubbed my hands with a vegetable brush until they hurt so much I couldn't touch anything with them. She parted my hair in the centre and pasted it down with water so it wouldn't stand up in its usual mess. At the given time, I thus awaited grandfather, standing behind our front door in my Sunday suit. The doorbell rang. I tore open the door. Bowing low, I said, "Good day, dear grandfather. We are so glad to see you. Herzlich willkommen." Without a word, grandfather strode past me. Quickly, he marched through the apartment, inspecting every room with care. He didn't stop until he reached the living room. We were allowed to shake hands then. He made me show him mine first. Both were clean. And then I had to turn around and lift up my feet one after the other. Grandfather wanted to see if the crosspiece between the sole and heel of each shoe had been polished with shoe cream. Since we knew about this whim, he didn't find anything to object to. Perhaps this is something I should start doing in school every morning. Afterwards, grandfather took his place, always the same one, at the living room table. He sat very straight. Father sat down opposite him. Mother remained standing behind grandfather's chair so she wouldn't miss anything he asked for. I crouched silently in the corner, red scrubbed hands on cleanly washed knees. Whenever I moved, Mother looked at me. She laid a finger on her lips, reminding me to be silent. Grandfather, as usual, talked at Father. He reproached him for not trying hard enough to find work. Reproach means to tell off. And Father listened with his head humbly lowered because he knew how the conversation would end. It always ran the same course. At the end, grandfather said without fail, "If you had gone to the railroad as I did, you wouldn't have brought your family to such misery." Father nodded in resignation. "But the boy," grandfather always added, "the boy will go to the railroad. I will see to it myself. The boy shall have a secure future and be entitled to an old age pension." Father agreed with grandfather. He agreed with him in everything. Because grandfather helped support us. As long as we only had father's unemployment pay, grandfather sent us money each month. This amount went into the household fund, and without it we'd have been hungry even more often. Suddenly there was such a violent bump upstairs that our lamp shook. "Oh, that was Friedrich," I said. Grandfather looked at me sternly, and then he asked Father, "Who is Friedrich?" Father readily explained. "Above us lives a Jewish family, the Schneiders. The boy's name is Friedrich, and the two are the same age. They are friends." Grandfather cleared his throat. "A Jewish family?" he inquired. "Yes," Father said. "Nice people." Grandfather said nothing for a while by pressing his lips hard together. Then he began. "I once had a superior who was a Jew. Cohn, his name was. None of us liked him. He always smiled, even when he told you off. Friendly on the surface. He'd ask whoever it was made a mistake into his office, and then he'd explain everything you'd done wrong as if you were a schoolboy. And always with a special friendliness. One time, it was summer, I saw that he wore a square rag on his chest and back underneath his shirt, a prayer shawl with a fringe on it. He didn't even take his hat off in the room. No, I really didn't like to remember Herr Cohen." Neither father nor mother commented on grandfather's story. Grandfather looked at us and then he said, "We are Christians. Bear in mind that Jews crucified our Lord." Here father interjected, "But not the Schneiders." Mother's face changed colour. Grandfather got up from the chair. He leaned on the table with his knuckles. So sharply it came out like a snarl. He ordered, "I do not wish the boy to associate with the Jew." He sat down again as suddenly as he'd stood up. Father and mother looked frightened. It was quiet, dreadfully quiet in the living room. The doorbell rang. Mother hurried to the door. Outside I heard Friedrich's voice. "Can he come upstairs, please?" Mother whispered, "Not possible. Grandfather's here." She shut the door and returned to the living room. "Who was that?" Grandfather asked imperiously. A child from the neighbourhood," Mother replied. Would you like another cup of coffee? So I think we'll probably end our reading for today there. As you can see, they're now the beginning in the context of the story. It's clear that there are some entrenched views already in Germany around the Jewish people and around what people think about the Jewish faith. And as we go through the story, we will see some of those views become more entrenched, and we'll see how the ruling party uses fear to stoke hatred against the Jews, but also so that Germans can displace their anger at the economic hardship they're feeling onto the Jewish people as life gets grimmer and tougher in Nazi Germany. I hope you enjoyed reading this morning. We'll carry on again tomorrow at 9:30. Enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy your studies, and I look forward to joining you again tomorrow morning. Take care and goodbye.